Welcome to TOOKY'S Sidebar, a book club for the recently scalped. I'm David.
I'm Gabe, top student in Samuel Chamberlain School for Muscular Christian.
And I'm Capitalissimo, known south of El Paso as El Segador de Norwood. And with us today is once again the Prudentialist.
Happy to be back, and I'm glad that you're not bald shaming anymore. Those comment sections are rough, but I'm glad that Mr. Norwood over there is doing quite.
It's true. Being bald is shame enough.
Yeah, another day older. Nothing is cheaper, but at least we haven't been struck by the Norwood Reaper.
Listen, the Norwood Reaper comes for all.
And we've got Prude back for a double dealer of My Confession by Samuel Chamberlain. We're reading the republished version by Distant Review again. This is a bit of a follow-on to our earlier episode on My Confession. This time we're covering the Glanton Gang, the portion of the book that has the most to do with Blood Meridian by Corncob McCormac.
Yeah, Reddit's favorite Western.
Yeah, Reddit and the TOOKY'S Mag subreddit, their favorite Western. So
the TOOKY'S Mag subreddit's just like Gabe and 5 other Gabe alts.
Gabe's my favorite.
Our thriving Reddit and female audience.
I commissioned sexy fan art of Gabe. We definitely need to commission some like fake TOOKY'S Mag fan art as a psyop that we have like genuine fans.
Look, Fiverr is like right down the road. And as soon as you ask for fan art, it'll be like a Canadian liquor store taking job applications. It'll just be 1,000 Indians waiting for your cash.
And in addition to the Glanton Gang stuff, actually before that, we're going to be doing the second half of the post Battle of Vista,
Kino.
the occupation of northern Mexico. There's a lot of interesting side stories we're going to be doing, maybe in a slightly less ordered way, just maybe sharing some of our highlights. I had 2 follow-ups before we get into it, though, guys. Things that I realized I missed out on last time because we had just a ton of content to cover. Yeah, so much Kino. But the first one is I got caught with my pants down by none other than the Prudentialist and our own Gabe. I did not know what the old versions looked like. So I got a copy of the PDF of the old. It was like $1,000 to get it in print version of My Confession. It's also available free on LibGen as a PDF. And I was actually a little bit disheartened to see how much of a better version it was reading through it. You know, there was color pictures, there was the footnotes, there was maps. There was actually more pictures than I think we get in this Distant Review version. So, I don't know. I just wanted to share that. It was a little bit of a surprise. I still recommend the
footnotes, too.
Yeah, the footnotes are amazing.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah, just so much Wikipedia hunting I had to do on my own that would have been saved, or just more context. So, anyway, it was just one of those things. Reading through it, I don't regret buying this version at all. There is another ebook from a different provider that I skimmed through that actually doesn't look quite as good as this one. So obviously there's a big price gap between a $20 paperback and a $1,000 whatever, but it's unfortunate that a lot of that material is already done, or to some extent could have been salvaged or reformatted slightly and was lost in this one.
Yeah, I didn't look at the other ones until I didn't look at that other version until I had finished this. But yeah, I mean it is a higher quality, but, you know, if it wasn't for the Dissident Review, this, you know, we definitely never would have read this. Mm-hmm. And their effort to bring these books back to light is definitely valuable.
Especially in form of physical media. I mean, it's if you actually want a real...
Yeah, absolutely.
Like Dave said, I think the Texas Historical Society version, I think, is like $500 on Amazon or some shit like that. So
it's insane. Yeah, I think it's 1,000.
So listen, you know what? You see an interesting name in a Distant Review version, just take out your phone. Be a zoomer, look on the Wikipedia, get some Subway Surfers footage underneath it. You know, you're fine.
If you haven't heard the previous episode, that's I don't think Gabe and I have the Dissident Review copy. I didn't buy it. I did the PDF.
Oh, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, good. So, sorry, Alaric, I haven't bought it. I bought your other Dissident Review articles, you know, publications, but not this book. But to hear that is really disheartening. But yeah, do what Gabe said. Look up every name that you see on here, because you're going to find a Wikipedia page or a historical society article about them, and you're going to go down a really cool rabbit hole. This book is, like we said earlier, an autobiography, a memoir of sorts, and every person that this guy runs into, he's not only telling stories about men who fought the Mexican-American War, but it's a piece of American history that no one talks about anymore.
Yeah, it's a literal who's who of American history. Like literally every side character has like a mile-long Wikipedia page.
All right, and the only thing I want to cover, I was going to make another like Star Wars reference, but I'm not going to, is the story we missed earlier on that was the Peninsula Jack story. I'm probably saying that wrong, but we might call this guy Jack a few times, and so we can just start diving into the stories now of the occupation. But this one, I believe, happened fairly early on. He gets called Peninsula Jack because Chamberlain, that is, because he stumbles across some Mexicans playing a game where they slash like a candy cube, like a circular candy cube. I guess it's not a cube at that point, with a sword or a machete, and then he like wins it, and he becomes known, at least among the Americans, as Peninsula Jack. I don't know. That was just one of the stories that really cracked me up because it was so.
Yeah, you have to chop a sugar cube in half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was during early in the campaign.
And he.
Yeah, it was a part.
Yeah, and he does it several times in a row, to the amazement of all of the local Mexicans who were watching him. And yeah. So like, the gringos got it. Yeah, the white man proves that he can play basketball. And
white man can
everyone is super excited.
Okay, I just looked it up. Wow. It means unrefined brown sugar. So all his friends are calling him Brown Sugar Jack.
I looked it up on Wikipedia. It doesn't look very enticing. It looks kind of gross. It's this really hard brown, like semi-processed sugar block. But I guess
when you're in the desert, in the 1840s, that's the only sugar you can have. That's the only sugar.
Yeah, you just got a bunch of agave sugar. What else are you going to do?
Yeah. And then other than that, guys, like those are the two things I realized I missed last time. One was just a lesson learned because I'd only viewed this interview copy. If you guys want to dive in, like whoever wants to take a first crack at it, we have a lot of like dudes getting their shirts ripped off and just whipped, people hanging by their thumbs and swinging and screaming. We have gang rape, beheadings, ear cutting. Like there's a lot to get into.
Excuse me, it's Lindy gang rape. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Prude.
Group struggle cuddle sessions.
Well, Prude, you're the guest. You should take the first crack at the summarization.
Well, of course, I think we left off towards after the Battle of Buena Vista, and we kind of went around and talked about Carmelita, and I think we had a weird age gap discourse in the last episode.
Actually, we didn't get into Carmelita.
Oh, we did not.
No, we didn't talk about her yet.
So that's in the bank, baby. Yeah, we'll get into that today.
I thought we did.
You read a passage.
I think it was one of his other conquests.
Yeah, you read the passage of it as a teaser right at the start.
Oh, did
and that was
we?
all that we got.
Okay. Because I remember that because this is probably like the most like strange episode of things I've been on. It's just like, yeah, we talked a little bit about everything, we talked about Mexican-American War, we talked about greasers. That's a slang that needs to come back into, parlance. But no, so
I'm bringing it back every day.
Yeah, we got to bring it back every day. Anytime I like pass by a taqueria, I'm like, those damn greasers. But
hola, greasers.
Hello, fellow greasers.
Hello, hola, fellow greaseros. It'll be a great time. This way before La Migra gets here. All the things she gotta do.
I was gonna recommend as a starting point maybe the Lady in Distress sequence, which is over like 2 or 3 chapters or so. That might be one that if you want to cover that, Prude, or anyone else, I think that's one that's worthy.
Oh, that's when he gets into fight with that Gorman guy, right?
Yeah. Why don't you go for it, Gabe?
All right, so this is the actual one where I mentioned last time, where he becomes he goes native slightly. So this is after the battle. He's on a patrol. And some white Americans, or some white men at the very least, are attempting to struggle cuddle some senoritas in this little villa. And he actually saves these women And they basically treat him like he goes full like Dune. They treat him like one of his own. The mother wants him to marry her daughters. He draws them cartoons of America, not cartoons, but his little drawings. Because he's been drawing from an early age. And they basically literally offer him to be like a literal what's the term? Caballo or some Spanish version of a cowboy. I forget the name.
Caballero.
Caballero. Yes, they literally offer him this little villa. They literally offer he has a little literally Klingon. Like he's literally offered to the Mexican lifestyle for saving these people from struggle cuddles. And he says,
what a horrible punishment.
But he's open to it. He's open to it. He does actually, despite all the memes, there is some sincere respect for the Mexicans, because at one point even, he listens to them singing and he feels very empathetic towards them. But he says, listen, I'm too loyal to my people. I'm too loyal to my flag. So he says, no, I will not go native. I will not be a third world brownist. And he gets into a duel with this one guy. If I remember correctly, this is
Gorman, who calls a bully, and he's kind of a jerk. And then
he's not beating anime allegations. Oh, no, I just want to say he's not beating the anime protagonist allegations in this at all.
Yeah. Maybe the best Chad, I don't know what you call him, Chad Jacks, Chamber Chad Jacks in the book, or in this chapter of him stabbing the dude. The Gorman thing, is essentially Gorman sees the girl is drinking on the job, and they just visit the place, and he's like, oh, I think want to rape that girl over there, one of the sisters. And then Chamberlain's like, oh no, don't do that. He's like, well, I'm gonna do it, and then I'll kill you if you interrupt, or something. It was suspiciously venomous and evil language. I'll just say that. Really justified Chamberlain's behavior fully. And then Chamberlain gets in a sword fight with a dude, stabs him, he tells the girl to run, and then hides his body in the corn. Just tucks him in. And then the what does he call the old man? Calls him the Don or something like that.
Yeah,
it is Don.
And the Don just takes care of the body. And to your point, they kind of become tighter friends, even more so, because that's the second snuggle cuddle he's defeated.
And also he's so looking at this brute's eye, looking at the brute in his uneasy eyes, I said very quietly, Jim Gorman, I will kill you for that. And he talks about how he's so apprehensive about killing a man. I'm like, Chamberlain, motherfucker, you probably killed a dozen men. You bit a guy's throat out when you were 15, a year ago. What are you talking about?
It's a sense of honor.
There's that muscular Christianity again. It's a sense of honor about killing a man.
He hides it really smoothly, though. He comes back to the base, and he even says he's like, oh yeah, he went out the other way. He has a whole backstory that was really competent. Nobody would catch on at camp. But yeah, it does mess with him. He gets a drinking problem for a short time, whatever that means in this context.
It's when you're more drunk than your horse. That's the case.
And Gorman's been around in this book before. He's in the ghost story.
Let's jump back in and try and be somewhat in order. Should we just go right to Carmelita? I mean, that's that's the sexy part.
Yeah. Okay. So after the battle of Buena Vista and some other disciplinary issues that Chamberlain always seems to find himself in, he goes out riding and ends up running into this ruined hut and finds this let's see. And what a sigh greeted me, a young and lovely female in a nude state. A girl as fair as any Anglo-Saxon lady stood in front of the ruined hut. With crimson cheeks, eyes flashing with scorn and indignation, her blue-black hair hanging below her waist. In grace and beauty she surpassed all of womankind. In front of this vision stood a greaser, who I recognized as an old acquaintance, El Tuerto, my partner in the combat with knives in San Nicolas some weeks before. He got in a knife duel in a brothel earlier in the book, and one much renowned from that particular event, though we will not be covering it in this podcast.
Yeah, that's probably his 6th duel out of the dozen he's had in this book.
The cutthroat was brandishing a strip of rawhide, with which he threatened the alabaster shoulders of this strayed Peri from paradise, while he gave utterance to the vilest curses in the Mexican tongue. So this girl is a child bride of old One Eye, El Tuerto. And as soon as El Tuerto sees Samuel Chamberlain, he's like, "It's the American demon," and runs. He just runs. He just runs away and leaves his naked wife to this guy who recently beat him in a fight.
Based
and so she was so she immediately falls in love with him and goes and gets dressed and then follows him back to camp. And they pledge their love to each other, and she becomes like a camp mascot. He gets permission to keep her there. One of the officers' wives makes her some riding clothes, I believe. He commissioned some riding clothes to be made for her, and she is just like this beautiful creature. And they're basically, they're basically married. Like, this is the love of his life. But all does not go well.
Before we go into the dark half, can we just interrogate this for a moment? I mean, how many?
Sure. Are you suggesting that perhaps our narrator is not entirely trustworthy, or may not be 100% reliable?
Yeah. How many 13-year-olds have you met that you would describe as?
No. Hold on. I think.
So, are you asking for a number?
I mean, he says this literally later in the text, where he goes and he says, and this is literally what we read at the end of the last episode. And she was not yet 14, but this was in Mexico, where mothers at 12 are not uncommon. And I mean, he's
let me read. I have a line
16.
highlighted. Can I just read it?
Yeah.
The women of Paras possess more than their share of beauty. Some have skin as fair as our own New England girls. Cope. But such enchanting, glorious eyes and black glossy hair, with little feet, foot guy, and hands and divinely graceful shapes, often mothers
Princess
at 13,
tiny feet,
grandmothers at 30, and becoming fearful old hags at 40.
Okay, let's not kill ourselves. That wall hits at 25.
The Latina wall is a real effect.
We can't build the actual border
Goes from
wall.
Senorita to Abuelita immediately.
No, listen, this was before Latinas were exposed to like Taki chips, all right, and Cheetos.
They
all
eat
right?
Takis,
I can buy.
drink it with hot cheese from the gas station. Charge day
Listen,
phone
this is before
and
there
lie in Spanish.
It's like exposing the natives to alcohol. The proud native man before you give the American white man his fire water.
Yeah.
They're two different. They're two different species before and after exposure.
Look, I lived in I came of age in El Paso, Texas. I knew many a young enlisted man that was like, "Hey, Senorita, I got BAH and a Dodge Charger. Let's get out of the barracks." Only to regret it a few years later as she hit the wall at 25 and he was stuck with a nagging bitch.
See, they can't live up to the Chamberlain mindset. That's the tragedy of the American white man. You can no longer get a proper trad Latino wife.
Carmelita is the byproduct of an Irish.
I think I figured it out. The age of consent is lower because they hit the wall sooner.
Oh,
it's about useful years.
I just thought the Mexicans are more libertarian than us.
Well, look, as long as the age of consent is legal in that specific
look,
as long as it's that specific municipality or whatever, it's still fine, right?
Okay, Sergeant Hatred, tell us more about young children.
Wouldn't you like a beautiful brown boy girl for your own, Gabe? Wouldn't you like a little brother / sister?
Wouldn't you like a little Carmelita from Mexico?
Listen, I've had my experiences with the Latinos, all right? And you know what? They are really the truly anarcho-capitalist country.
Yeah, they've got gay marriage and drugs legalized, and mothers at 12. It's the libertarian paradise.
Libertopia is real.
It's in Mexico. Go there.
You get your guns and your weed. It's heaven.
The streets of Port-au-Prince. A narco.
Oh yeah, Carmelita was sold by her mother, basically.
Yes.
To the one-eyed bastard, like he was like a landlord of some kind.
Very
the father had a debt that could not be paid. She was the daughter of an Irishman and a full-blooded Spanish woman. Her name was Carmelita Moro or Moore, but her father died in debt, and she and her mother were sold as peons to an old mestizo named Vejo, the one-eyed gentleman of the hovel. By the threats and cruel treatment of her mother had compelled her to marry the old wretch, and the marriage took place the day before. She ran away and hid in a little hut, but El Tuerto found her and was about to chastise her into compliance at the very moment I made my appearance. But yeah, this is not the first. Yeah, I know. What excellent time. See, this is why our narrator is so cool. What an absolute Chad who never lies. What a great guy. This 100% happened the way that he wrote it. And if you say otherwise, you're an insult to this great American hero. So
you may have evidence.
It's true.
But think about it.
You know what?
Is it worth it to question a Chad?
Is it worth questioning this 6'3" silver-eyed Giga Chad? I don't think so. This guy's killed more Mexicans.
Who has confessed to killing dozens of men?
Yes. I killed 50 men. Well, he killed 50 greasers, good sir. Like, props to you. But yeah, so their love is
killed. I don't know.
Their love is not meant to be, and unfortunately, that is definitely the case. And she's got no one, no mother, no father, no friends, nobody, and oh, alas, she unfortunately dies.
So yeah, El Tuerte decides to wage some legal war and gets a bunch of Mexicans together and petitions to get Carmelita returned. Everyone says that El Tuerte is a good boy who did do nothing, and that Carmelita ought to be returned to him. Obviously, she does not want this, in Chamberlain's telling. And the evidence of Tuerte being an active criminal is overwhelming, but they are forced through the laws of civil procedure to return this trafficked girl to her captor. And she is never seen again. Chamberlain goes looking for her almost immediately, and is told that she was chopped into many tiny pieces.
She was
and
gang
thrown
raped
into a bush
and then chopped apart. Yeah.
Yes.
Horrific.
Yes. First, El Tuerte consummated their marriage, and then gave her to his gang of guerrillas before chopping her up and throwing her to the buzzards and coyotes.
Yeah, and this marks a severe tonal shift, by the way. Like, this affects him very deeply. Yeah.
And, to the degree that Chamberlain was a good actor in this, it is actually fairly, it does affect his behavior. He says that he begins drinking to excess, and again, that is in a context where he was given a daily whiskey ration already. It also bears mentioning that he named one of his daughters Carmelita, eventually, obviously many years down the line. Mm-hmm. There was probably some legitimate affection and some real truth to the, albeit romanticized tale that he tells about her ill fate.
Yeah, there's an emotional truth in there.
Yeah, right.
I mean, to a point where he's eager to go hunt any Mexican for revenge.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, he really wants to get. He searches for El Tuerte, but cannot find him at all.
Yeah.
He never gets revenge.
This is White Whale.
Although he's dead now. They're both dead now.
Yeah.
So
Everyone involved in this
end.
book is actually dead now.
that's true. That's true.
It's like the end of Barry
So-
Lyndon. You know, they're all equal now.
You know what? I just want a little side note that this book, like, you realize he wrote this entire 300-pager by hand, if I recall. Yeah, he had to do it by hand at that time. By hand. And he used it as a heirloom, and he made all his family members read it, assumingly also his wife. So imagine you're his grandkids in 1904. You know, you're just out of the factories, and he's telling you stories about, oh, man, my beloved Carmelita. Man, she'd give great head.
Oh, so this is... Have you read that book? What, Grandpa's book? Yeah, the one where he lists all the people he killed and all the premarital sex he had? Yep. Huh. Weird old Grandpa.
Mom, why are you named Carmelita while we're all white and Anglo? Could you imagine explaining that to your wife? We're gonna name her. We're gonna name our daughter after this woman I fell in love with when I was 16, who was raped by a Mexican gang and then cut into pieces. Whom I loved very much. You wouldn't understand. I wish I was there for
You
that
before no fault
conversation
divorce.
with the midwife.
Yeah.
Sure, honey, women's suffrage hasn't happened yet, so I'm still obedient to you.
You can't divorce me. No, like, you know, she asked,
And
why
I
you
can't
want...
divorce you, so...
And you can
No,
beat
she
me.
asked him, like, why you want to name him Carmelita? No, she asked him why you want to name her Carmelita. He's like, I'm glad you asked. And he takes out the book out of his trench coat. He's like, you got
This
to...
giant
This
manuscript.
giant pile of pages that he scribbled on. I'm glad you asked, honey. The year was 1848, and I was only 16 years old. And, well, I met the love of my life. You have to do. I was alpha widowed. At 15 years old.
It's like the it's like the Putin meme. She asks him the question. He's like, "Well, it all started in 1842 when I was 16 years old, sweetie, and I met the first love of my life." One of many.
Her skin was whiter than yours.
Oh, God.
Honestly, alabaster, like no other.
Yeah, like
More
kind
of the
Marty
Emerald Isle.
Phillips, like a Marty Phillips crossover. Actually, surprisingly enough, I'm getting recollections of, what was the island one called?
Holy Hunt.
Holy
Holy
Hunt.
Hunt?
The Holy,
one you guys
Holy
don't
Hunt
like.
with the pale Latina. Yeah,
Hey man, smoking hot Latinas have a place for everyone,
Yeah.
and it just so happens
just
that our
happens to
protagonist in
include
this
a
one
bunch of
isn't
retards.
retarded.
Listen, Chamberlain is autistic, not Down syndrome. There's two different mental conditions.
He is the opposite of autistic. This
Yeah.
guy has Riz coming out of every single pore.
I have one other from this kind of period I wanted to cover too. The Reward of Merit is the particular chapter, but I mean, just this whole sequence over the course of this whole second half. He gets promoted to corporal and busted, I think, twice.
Yes.
This has been court-martialed like 4 times. And at least one of them in this particular chapter, there's an Irishman who was in the army. He gets injured, discharged, and he kind of hangs around as a like a peddler. Like he's selling liquor and he's like, you know, trading, making a little money. I think he's saving. He's not in the best of health, and he's saving up for his trip home to Michigan, or somewhere back in the U.S. It's not Texas, so it's a bit of a trip, and he's saving up.
This was such a bad beat.
This gets dark, and this is so basically some dickhead officer is like, none of that in this in my camp. Arrest him and flog him. And I think Chamberlain is the first one, and Chamberlain's like, fuck that, I'm not doing that. And he's like, arrest this son of a bitch. And then so Chamberlain gets strapped down, and I'll put the picture in as well of this that Chamberlain provides. And then the next guy is like, all right, you flog this little, sickly Irishman. He's like, no, that's messed up. He gets arrested as well. So they're tied up together, and Chamberlain is gagged with, what is it, like a horse pin or something in his mouth to keep him from yelling, because he's making such a ruckus. And there's just a line of dudes, like there's like 8 dudes that are assigned to refuse to do it before one finally does, the guy who ended up marrying the Great Western someday. And they flog the dude. And does he die, or is he just mosey off in poor health?
Yeah, no, he dies.
He does die.
Yeah.
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 And the other thing
He gets
too,
whipped to death.
Because it's not a few whipping.
Oh, no, it's like 30 lashes.
80 or something insane. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 30 or 50, and his back is just busted out. And then they just throw
50,
they throw his body out, and they don't care if he lives or dies. They do not tend to him at all. But in between that and then towards, say, going to California, we just get a laundry list of people who die. Like, there's a whole chapter about military executions. So all of the Irish deserters are properly disposed of. The Irish question is settled. And they list all
Patricios, yeah.
They list out all the other executions. We also are listed about over his despair over the loss of Carmelita. We get a whole chapter on all of the military executions that he was aware of, and the it is important to note this is the only time that the historians will do the actually here. Chamberlain's account of this execution was from hearsay. After Buena Vista, the major fighting shifted to General Winfield Scott's seaborne invasion, but he's got all the lists and stories of the military executions. Then you get some really other dark stories in here. There's the one about the war coming to an end, or when the news erupts that the treaty had came out.
Oh
and
my God.
all of the women that had ever... basically, they do the same thing that the French did to French women who were with the Nazis. They basically just brand, stab, cut, and mutilate any woman that slept with the whites or gave information to the U.S. military. Some are branded on the forehead with the letters U.S. on it. Others had their ears cut off, and others were just stabbed and raped to death.
Lots of ear cutting.
Lots of ear cutting. You have one.
It's a favorite.
You have one ear left.
Well, hey, that's one of the few times where Chamberlain's body counts both align.
Why did it take me so long?
they both align in that one moment. You know.
You have one ear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have one ear left.
The Irish execution was intense because they had a bunch of carts with the guys on, and then they're just watching a Mexican fort. And when it falls, the guy is supposed to give I forget, the colonel or whatever, is supposed to give the order to move the carts to kill them. Yeah, it's just pretty gruesome and pointlessly so. It kind of shows maybe just like the spiraling. Retribution.
I mean, for example, though, I mean, like this is what was ordered for them. Nearly 100 of the Patricios were captured. They were tried by a court-martial, 50 sentenced to be hanged, the rest to dig graves of their executed comrades, and to receive 200 lashes on the bare back, with the letter D to be branded on the cheek with a red-hot iron, to wear an iron yoke weighing 8 pounds with 3 prongs, 1 each foot in length around the neck, to be confined to hard labor in charge of the guard during the time the army should remain in Mexico, and then have their heads shaved and to be drummed out of camp. Absolutely. I mean, as they should. These people are traitors to the United States military. But you do get a pretty detailed description of what all of this looks like, and then of course the guerrillas are still fighting despite the treaty coming around, and then you have the more or less at this point it's just like highwaymen and Mexicans that aren't going to stop to fight with them, to a point where we list out one battle at the horse fort. 7 killed, 12 wounded, 17 horses were killed or so badly wounded that they were to be unserviceable. Of the Mexicans, 29 lay dead as they fell. 2 wagon load of saddles and arms collected next to be brought back to camp. And then at this point, during the occupation, it just stops being polite or nice. Like, any fighting that breaks out, it doesn't matter. Men, women, and children are getting killed. Like, yeah, the war is technically over, but you're still in hostile territory where it's race war rules apply, and so no one is immune.
Yeah, you notice like the pleasantries, like the idea of the proper war is completely destroyed in this novel. In the American continent, like there was this one, I don't know who said this, but
only the officers, basically.
Right, but the idea of like the Americans invented the concept of total war. Usually that's attributed to Sherman, but you can see it here. Like, I'm more familiar with the European wars, and you don't see anything like this until the 30 Years' War, and something after the Franco-Prussian War. The total degradation of any like army discipline, and like, this all-out guerrilla partisan warfare. Like you just see any ideas of custom organization. Like the Battle of Buena Vista is mostly a normal combat situation for the most part, but after the Battle of Buena Vista, it just becomes totally and utterly savage. Like on both sides, it becomes absolute brutality.
Gabe, if you want to see brutality,
evolve.
I really want you to read first-hand accounts of King Philip's War.
King Philip's War.
Yeah, like if you ever want to understand
against
where
the natives.
against the natives is where American like ethnogenesis kind of begins. Go look up that, because that is basically white Anglo settlers fight a race war to survive.
Yeah, that was the one where they would like burn the entire village like from the outside and just like do a shooting circle inside as they tried to escape. Right.
That was when George Washington was still a British officer, right?
No, this is before.
No,
George
that was
Washington.
the French Indian War.
That's the French Indian.
Yeah, I guess
that's the 7 Years' War.
There's a Oh, okay. So this is way more early in the American
This is before.
development.
Gabe doesn't know much American history because he's, an ESL.
Because I am a European. I am a noble European immigrant.
Oh, yeah.
Another Ellis
A
Islander.
European immigrant.
Whatever you say there.
I wouldn't describe it Ellis. I wouldn't say Ellis.
He snuck in through DFW.
And now I understand why David Foster Wallace killed himself.
Yeah, he brought Gabe in the old prison wallet, and out he came.
Oh god.
Yep.
So
yeah, this book really does take
I
a
do
dark
want to
turn
roll
after
back a little
Carmelita
bit.
dies.
I do want to roll back a little bit to the San Patricios. So the Irish the Irish deserters who went and joined the Mexicans due to their papal loyalties. So when they all get rounded up, they all get executed. But during the execution, while they're standing on the backs of these horse carts waiting for those things to drive away so that they can drop to their deaths and be hung, they're trolling the troops who are guarding them.
Spiritual Australians shit posting.
And so one said, "Colonel, oh Colonel dear, will you grant a favour to a dying man, one of the old second, a Florida man? Colonel." When Harney asked what he wanted, the Irishman replied, Thanks. Colonel, I knew you had a kind heart. Please take me dudeen out of me pocket and light it by your elegant hair. That's all, Colonel." The red-headed colonel struck the jester a dastard blow on the mouth with his saber hilt, knocking out some of his teeth. As the poor wretch spit out blood, he cried, "Bad luck to you. You've spoilt me smoking entirely. I shan't be able to hold the pipe in my mouth as long as I live."
Yeah.
So...
No, back with the Irish had banter.
So yes, so
Such
he's
was
just
the miserable end to the
this
end
guy's
of this legion of San Patricio.
yes.
But this is the one of hearsay.
Trolling for a final smoke. Yes. So, yeah, so he was probably not there and just wanted to make the Irish a trolling lout, as we all in fact are.
But the thing is, he's very good with dialogue and characterization. Like, he wasn't there, but if the dialogue sounds believable. Like the interactions sound believable enough where you could believe this happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was pretty comic. I mean, that's pretty. It seems fairly.
What a way to go!
Fictional. I mean, yeah,
It's a great way to go.
I hope it really happened, because it's a great way to go out. If you gotta be hung, but yeah, probably not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Another fun passage though about this is this goes back to our discussion about how the women were just absolutely just how the women were treated after the war. So yeah, during the war, many of the females of the country had proved to be firm friends of those gringos, and were often indebted to them for the valuable information regarding the movements of the enemy and their own countrymen. Our fair female friends showed the utmost contempt for the weak, dissolute greasers, and were public in their outspoken admiration of those stalwart frames, fair skins, blue eyes, and the kind and courteous demeanor of los barbianos del norte. This feeling was not confined to the lower classes, the señoritas ricas, and which means the rich ladies, and the doños porros castellanas were of the town shared it with the poblanos and margaritas of the villages, which of course did not help that the Mexicans were ready to kill all the collaborating women.
Manlet rage.
Manlet rage. Yeah. 5'8".
It's a good insight into woman nature.
White Giga Chad. Yeah, it is.
It's a great insight.
A conquered people will always offer themselves up to the conquering men.
Yeah. Oh, man. Ocasio-Cortez, I'm coming for you next. the one that I want to do was the after the peace is signed, Chamberlain and his buddy go out drinking. And I just want to read this. So they just go out, go into like the roughest, dirtiest bars. Common prudence should have caused us to retire, but it wasn't our style. So we swaggered up to the bar, called it for our drinks, and selected for partners 3 of the best-looking senoritas in the room. We took places on the floor and called for a dance. When Moore, his partner, cried out, "I am cut!" A greaser had knifed him in the side. It's just a hilarious image of these 2 honkies after the war ends. There's just this seething resentment against them. They just swagger into a bar and just like, hey cutie, come dance with me. And just immediately just a knife fight breaks out.
No, the best part is that he just shoots the guy dead.
Yeah, right.
That's the best part. He's just like, I just pulled out my revolver and killed him.
Yeah.
I have no time for greasers knifing my wingman. I must shoot him in the back. He fell dead.
He literally did the Indiana Jones
absolutely
thing.
Based. Absolutely based.
Mm. He survives.
Yep.
And the guy he killed actually was a wanted criminal. So that's a whole other thing where the night guard tries to tell him, oh yeah, don't tell anybody about this because I'm going to claim the bounty on the dude you
for
killed.
$1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, which at the time was an unbelievable sum. Yeah, he would have been set.
Or does the FBI not put out warrants like or bounties like they used to? Like it used to be you could retire on that kind of money. $1,000 in that era's money was like, all right, I shot one wanted man. I'm just gonna go live in a estate for the rest of my life.
I want to live on a farm.
Well, the FBI wouldn't be founded for another 80, 90 years at this point.
Well, yeah, not literally the FBI, but the government. I feel like bounties were more meaningful then.
No, because scalp hunters had to take a shit ton of scalps to get any cash, dude.
Yeah, scalps.
Yeah, now
but,
it's just dog the bounty hunter and private investigator licenses. It's not the same. We have law and order now. Well, we have anarcho-tyranny, but I mean, back then, like, hey, the justice of the peace or the magistrate's not going to be here for like another 6 months for trial. If you take him out back and hang him from a tree, like that would speed up this justice. Like, we used to be a proper country. Just saying.
Mm-hmm. We used to have the base part of the anarcho-tyranny.
Okay, so just because you asked, I did look, and the FBI still offers some pretty serious money for wanted fugitives, and just flipping through the list here, it seems like they have stuff that is $250,000 for sex trafficking a child. Or,
I'm not getting out of bed for that.
Or $5 million for being the head of MS-13. Seems like that ought to be higher too. Let's see.
Yeah.
All these years later, and greasers are still the problem.
Right. This guy, Vittelham Innocent, is $2 million for let's see. I don't even know what he did. It doesn't even say what he did. It's probably pretty bad. $2 million. But
you're gonna bump into him in a bar. It's not easy to catch these people. Compared to this, you just stumble into any greaser bar back in the day, you get stabbed by some guy, and 1 in 5
if
chance.
you shoot that guy, if you shoot that guy, it's probably worth something.
Yeah, it'll chase down a few buckaroos.
It's one glorious step to James Polk's dream each day.
Yeah. And I don't want to dwell too long because I know we still have the whole Glanton section, which is shorter, but it's pretty dense. Is there any other, I guess, major segments here? We're skipping over. There's several battles that are really intense. Manhunts. Chamberlain gets chased by the gangs. One's trying to deliver a message, trying to beat charges of he has to prove himself for some reason by delivering a message. We're skipping a bunch. Was there any, I guess, you guys really feel like you can't?
Well,
you can't skip?
there was.
He
there
gives
was
a woman away.
Tall Scottish waifu.
Yeah. So there was.
Scotch
so
Ellen.
he fake marries Scotch Ellen, and then clearly never intended to. So he
I never loved
fake
you.
marries this woman because he's going to California, right? And in order for women to go to California, they have to be accompanied by a man, and so he agrees to have Scotch Ellen accompany him. She keeps a very tidy household. He gets extremely comfortable with it, but never intends to make her an honest woman, and so eventually gets cucked out of it, and is noble about it. He gives her away at the altar, but then feels seller's remorse almost immediately.
How do we feel about this, Gabe?
Listen, it's done giving away the altar. It's done in a based way. I don't think it's particularly cucky, because he didn't even fuck her that much. He keeps it very subtle that we're not
Just a little.
Just a little.
Just a little. It's a love tap. It's a love tap. Listen, she's
just
6 foot.
the tip.
You think about it. Listen, she's a 6 foot tall woman, so you got to think about the dimensions of her vagina, right? So there's a lot of space in there anyway. So you're not really going to notice it in terms of multiple use.
This is real true.
Gabe, not those calipers. Those are the phrenology calipers. Don't use those ones.
This is real.
They're
This is real
multi-purpose.
true cell hours right here.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Because she's 6 foot tall. No. Think about it. Like, listen, she's a purebred Celt
I have
of the
been with
northern
women
mountains.
much taller than me. I've had my fair share of climbing
So
mountains here.
You
Gabe.
understand what I'm saying, then? You understand what I'm
Gabe,
saying?
you
Then?
need to
It's
stop.
very spacious.
You need to stop.
Listen,
Gabe, your understanding of vaginas is a little bit
The Faustian man climbs the mountain because it is there.
exactly.
You wouldn't understand, Gabe.
Exactly.
But no, I found it.
I'm very
I
tall.
kind of found it to be rather based because he was just like, "Ugh, this woman wants an actual marriage. I might as well get rid of her."
Listen, she's too white for me. I'm already Latina pilled. He's already one of those base Latina guys already.
He's not over Carmelita yet, so obviously he's like, "Ugh."
no joke. That probably was part of it.
Oh, I'm sure
I
it
wouldn't be surprised
was.
if he
But
yeah,
I mean, the way
just
he
raw.
describes it is that like obviously this Ellen woman wouldn't be happy unless she had like a proper marriage and husband. So I arranged it with a man that fancied her and she fancied, and just left it at that because he's like, oh, I just read it as kind of like a Giga Chad, like, oh, this fucking woman, she wants to like get actual marriage, she wants to be a wife and a homemaker. I'm so done with this. That's how I read it. I was like, wow, okay, cool. Like, this man obviously, like, if this is Bronze Age mindset before, we had some strange man with a thick Romanian accent tell us how it is. Take the Chamberlain pill. Take the Chamberlain pill. Read my confession.
And to be clear, he's out of the military at this point. He's a wagon master is his title. So he's, I think he's just a sort of a private citizen supporting it. But his heart isn't really in it. And then through a series of very odd events, he ends up joining the Glanton gang that begins with him encountering, what the fuck is this weirdo's name?
Happy Jack.
Happy Jack, who may be mentally handicapped. And just
So essentially, yeah. So he had started being a wagon master after Scotch Ellen left. He basically, he says that he started neglecting his duties and once again drinking to excess again. Basically, his shit is breaking all the time, and he's starting to get in trouble with the rest of the run. Let's see. I'm trying to find this section.
So while you do that,
Right, this
he's wagon master, and he is now in the Sonora Desert, or what is called Life in Sonora. So he's actually going to be in what is modern day Tucson, Arizona. And the cool thing too about these sketches we see here is that one of the footnotes here in the Presidio in Tucson Tucson, Sonora. My apologies, not Tucson, Arizona. But anyways, it says this may have been the first sketches ever made by an American that did not become a U.S. territory until 1853. So yeah, this is the Arizona part of the territory that we kind of seize, or that we're part of now, before one of the treaties emerges. And
this is also proof that how much of a good sketch artist he is, because he has no training in artistry. So, but it's actually pretty damn for like a guy just randomly drawing in the middle of nowhere. It's like a beautiful fort, some mountains.
So anyway, so at this point, Samuel Chamberlain is once again in trouble, and he has been tied up. And basically, he's tied up in the sun as punishment. And so a little man, a small, dried up, wiry man dressed in a half Indian, half Mexican costume, and armed with a heavy Kentucky rifle, revolver, and a huge Bowie knife, walked up and just cut him down. Immediately, this guy gets seized by the guards and also gets tied up next to him. His actions and language were strange and highly ludicrous. He would howl like a coyote, bellow like a bull, crow like a cock, bray until all the mules joined in the chorus, and intermingle all of this with strange oaths and expressions in a mixture of Spanish, English, and Chinook. "Hey, I used a damn pork eaters," he said. "You got a hold of the wrong hombre, Correjo. I'm that old buffalo Tom Hickok crying to be tied up like a buffalo calf, bellowing like Buffalo Bull. Hellfire shooting me. What will Glanton say?" He ended with a prolonged howl like that of a prairie wolf and broke down crying like a child.
Also, since you usually correct people on pronunciations, that was usted, not used.
Ooh.
Oh, did he say usted?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was supposed to be usted, like used to, because he does use. Yeah, no, you're right. Usted does make sense, but I thought it was like used
certified
like used
cat
to.
moment.
Damn.
I did it.
Damn,
You're
Cap
right.
got
No, I
that
appreciate
checked.
it.
First moment in the sidebar. Cap gets checked.
Well, as someone who blessedly does not need to spend that much time around the Latinx folks, I'm not that familiar with their strange and foreign tongue. So
He's just familiar with people who, shoot each other over shoes.
well, that's true. That's why I said used to. Anyway, why don't y'all continue? I'm finna go get a drink of water.
Sweet child. He's gonna have that water with a nice spoonful of cornstarch.
He's turning into one of those foundational Black Americans Tariq Nasheed keeps ranting about.
He's totally buck broken. But yeah, so he makes the announcement he is going to join the Glanton gang by escaping and doing what is necessary to get out. So he makes his excuse, and he asked him for his pay of $75, and at this time he had over $400 of his own, and he was going to get the hell out of there. And thus we slowly transition towards the last 50 some odd pages of this book, where it's now going to be our time with Glanton's band of scalp hunters. And this is where we get all the Blood Meridian influence.
DLC.
Yeah, we're finally there, like an hour into this discussion.
And notice, I got the physical copy. So the Glanton stuff doesn't make a comeback until page 323, technically, A Ranger's Life in Sonora. So all of this, if you're reading this just for the Cormac McCarthy achievement thing, you're not getting it until page 323.
Dude, there are some people who have YouTube channels of just them reading these last 50 pages like really seriously with pictures of the judge flashing behind them.
Oh,
like,
God,
there's an entire industry
Judge
of this
Holden
shit.
ASMR.
Yeah. I'm not joking. It's a great section, but yeah, for me, it's not even my favorite. But it's interesting, I guess, for that reason, and just historically what this represents, that this existed.
I was about to say, like, the first
insane band of
280 pages are far more interesting to me for both a historical and autobiographical context than anything that may have inspired Cormac McCarthy. And I know this stuff is good, it's interesting, but to me, we get the whole story of just this swashbuckling, like, 16-year-old Giga Chad who, like, fucks and kills his way through Mexico. I don't know. I found that way more interesting than
he's way cooler than the kid.
Oh yeah,
he's way cooler than the kid.
He is way cooler than the kid.
100%.
Like Cormac
that needs to be
Chamberlain so hard.
That needs to be something that's put in as like a fake YouTube thumbnail now. Just like
he's cooler than the kid.
Or like
What?
my confession sound, like passages from my confession to like Kill Greasers too. Like it'll be like a music compilation. It'll be good.
Hell yeah.
Judge Holden songs to listen and kill Indians too. Because they have all those like doomer jazz music for when you're driving your taxi cab and stuff like that. Like, and it has like the little Wojak.
Judge Holden violin music to traffic children too.
Oh, good God.
I want to read the intro to Glanton's gang because it gives you a taste of what the insanity is. So they go, he leads him into this like winding ravine to meet the gang. And it's just this rough, scruffy bunch of bastards of all, stripes. You have Native American dudes, you got white dudes of all different kinds. You got, just a bunch of ragtag weirdos. And then Glanton comes up to Chamberlain. What's the exact line? I think he just like comes up yelling, and then Chamberlain punches him, and then Glanton basically he puts a gun to his head.
Glanton arose with the blood streaming from his face, staggered up to me, and pressed a cocked revolver to my head. Though I expected instant death, I looked at the brute calmly in the eyes while I silently prayed to my heavenly Father for forgiveness. For a full 1 minute he glared into my eyes with the cold tube pressed against my forehead, and then lowering his pistol, he grasped my hand and shaking it warmly said, "Real grit, stranger. You'll pass. You strike like the kick of a burro." I found that I had passed a successful ordeal and was thus initiated into Glanton's band.
Yeah.
He has passed a vibe check.
He used frightening or intimidating presence.
Terrifying presence.
Terrifying
yes.
presence from New Vegas.
Yeah, good feat to have. And then Glanton's backstory is that he was involved in an Indian war. What was it? Was his wife killed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm glad that he did not look back in anger. All right, because there's Cherokee Indians, there's Delaware Indians, there's even some French Canadians.
He didn't look back in anger. He looked forward in anger.
Yeah. How many more can I kill?
A true archaeofuturist.
And there's reference to the regulators, civil war between the regulators and the moderators. Do you guys have any sense what?
Yes,
what
that's Billy the Kid's backstory actually
Okay.
in New Mexico. That's the
there was.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a stretch of land between Texas and Louisiana that was disputed ground, and because it was disputed, no one was enforcing laws there. And so there were these two feuding sides of a few hundred people each, called the regulators and the moderators, who were basically fighting out how the area would be administrated. But it was also between I guess this was during the period of the Texas Republic.
Yes,
but I could be wrong about that.
This is during that period. You have what's known as the Sabine Free State, sort of the quote neutral ground. You have the Americans as far up to the Red River by where Shreveport is, and then a lot of this takes place really in between what would be in between, I guess, like Nacogdoches, Shelby, Marshall, Henderson, that area of like really far, far East Texas. And it is, quote unquote militias to prevent the regulators. They're there to prevent cattle rustling, and then you've got a lot of fighting in between. Also, this is not the first conflict in American history where the name regulators gets used. You also have what's known as the War of Regulation in the southern colonies right before the American Revolution, and there's a lot of argument that has been made by historians that is actually the real start of the American Revolution in the South rather than what happens in the North. But fun tidbit of American history. That's a whole other side story. But yeah, he's part of that. He's lost his wife to some Indians. He calls them the red N-word. So, if you just the word's so powerful, you just have to throw a color onto it. You can still use it. It's got that much power.
He's got a black dude in the gang too. He's gonna be like, bro, you gotta say that?
I'm right here. I mean, he's the leader of the gang. He's the one that writes up the N-word pass, Cinquenta Paces has gone to hell. Those red,
I do appreciate that damned and bitch are regularly
censored out.
Are regularly redacted in this book, but that one is not.
Oh, the N-word is not censored, but things that say hell, I mean, even the word...
It sure isn't.
Even when people say, like, you damned son of a bitch, all of that has got, like, the little hyphens to dash it out, like we use asterisks today to blash out the curse word.
Yep.
But nope, that word is right there for the world to see. So, introduce this to your history class if you are a college-age student or younger, and have fun reading that out loud in history class.
Yeah.
Hey, it's not exploitive, all right? It's a factual description.
It is.
All right, so technically doesn't count.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nowadays, we could have all colors of N-word forming some sort of Power Rangers. And then, that's the power of diversity, right? Everyone
gets their own N-word.
Colored robot, right? Yeah.
Mecha.
Thanks, Gabe.
Yeah. We tried so hard. But suddenly the snow N-word just had to jump in.
Listen, I'm from the Balkans, all right? I can say it. All right, thank you very much. It's like, no, because...
Let's try, all right, a little bit back on with our scalping boys, our boys in the field. What do they do? This section is the most desolate of the book feeling. I guess maybe because they're farther out on the frontier. But even Mexico doesn't feel as barren as this. Like they start wandering. This is a fairly short amount of time, but they start wandering the desert. They stumble across some Mormons. A Mormon actually is an interesting interaction. The whole Glanton gang comes across this wagon that's been raided. There's a bunch of arrows everywhere. There's a dead skeleton of a father, a mother, and 2 small children, and a Book of Mormon with them. And then one of the guys that I think might have been one of the native scouts, he's like, this is white dudes that did this. The Indians would not leave this many arrowheads.
Yeah, there are a ton of different kinds of arrows used, and they left all of them. Right. So it's like, yeah, no one, they would value these things, so they would take them. So, why is it like this? It's staged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then nothing more is said of it. Nothing more is said of it.
Really ugly, dark mystery. Yeah, that just kind of sits there.
Yeah, it's just like, that's in the world. That's out there. We have no idea what happened, but it's
literally
out there.
just a psyop, a literal psyop event happens.
Well, I think it's important to also consider that at this time, the relation between natives, the Mexicans, Texans, outlaws, and the United States government, all of them do not have the world's best opinion of the Mormons at all. And as we will note throughout the development of the, Continental Railroad and everything like that, the Mormons proved to have significantly way more power than they used to be. And remember, these guys started up in the Midwest, and would eventually find themselves moving further and further westward as both their church, their beliefs, and their ideas would be challenged, persecuted, and would move further and further away with Mormon forts, massacres, killings, and fights with both the Federals, the Texans, white settlers and anyone else in the area. So I mean, to say that a bunch of Mormons were killed,
and the bugs on Clandathu,
absolutely. The Mormons are just they're there.
You can't catch a break.
No, I mean, like the only I'm going to be very nice about expressing my opinion on the Mormon question, but the Mormons have their most redeeming Mormon that I can think of is John Moses Browning.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, he's the only.
God,
he's the only to me. So John Moses Browning, everyone knows Browning firearms. He learned the trade from his father, who converted to Mormonism very early on in his life and became the sort of gunsmithy for the Mormon cause throughout his life. I think he had like 11 children, and John Moses Browning picked up the trade. And John Moses Browning, to me, just by the nature of his inventions, I like to think that God redeemed him from his heretical beliefs, because, good God, John Moses Browning.
Absolute genius. Yeah. I mean, the 1911 and the Ma Deuce alone. I mean,
it's been over 100 years, and we have not
designs.
Truly evolved since the 1911 design. We have not changed from the automatic, It's crazy to think.
The essential design of an automatic handgun. Yeah. Exactly.
Anyways,
see, that's proper. That's proper Mormon craftsmanship right there.
We love our mountain Jews, don't we, folks?
We love our Mormons. Mountain jihadis. Listen, there will be a mountain jihad. We'll make Dune a reality one day. One day, the Mormons will activate.
Yeah, but so for instance, the first time the Mormons actually get mentioned is in a footnote about one of the colonels, Colonel Alexander W. Donovan, a frontier lawyer of Kentucky birth who had served as a brigadier general of the Missouri militia in the 1838 campaign against the Mormons. And he would serve with Missouri Mounted Volunteers,
based,
to go fight the Mexicans. But yeah, so just like so to the fact that white people probably killed it, or someone who is like trying to frame the Indians, kind of doesn't really surprise you there, because also when they mentioned the Mormon Bible that follows to Allahs from her defender Hickman, William A. Hickman, one of the original bodyguards of the prophet. Joseph Smith was a celebrated Mormon scout and killer and wrote his memoirs under the title Brigham's Destroying Angel. So if you're interested in Mormon history, you can go read that.
And all of this is a side quest here in this book. Like, it's still eerie as fuck from their perspective.
Yeah, like if you were to take the Wild Wasteland trait, you would run across this Mormon execution.
Mm.
Yeah, it's completely out of nowhere. And you're right, and David's right about the feeling of desolation. Like, the Battle of Buena Vista is a great benchmark, because before the battle, it's basically just a big-ass romp. It's fun, it's campy, it's cozy. The coziness lasts a little bit after the Battle of Buena Vista, but then it just slowly derails into absolute, like, apocalypse now hell, basically.
Yeah. And I mean, well, and once he joins the Glanton gang, then you've gone through the transformation sequence in From Dusk Till Dawn, and the book is a completely different genre.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like going to the bar, and it's like if you're there too late, it's different creepy crawlies start coming out, and it's like, oh, I think I need to go to bed, guys. It's like 2 a.m.
Yeah,
the people that are still out are kind of sad, and that's the Glanton gang, basically. It's not the
absolutely.
Winners.
The Glanton gang is after the lights come on.
The lights come on, last
scatter.
call has emerged, and it's all the fatties that are left and all the other ugly freaks. But yeah, I mean, also to consider, we're in like totally unsettled territory. You are in Los Fronteras, you are out in unsettled lands. It is hot desert. There is no air conditioning. It is just Indians, traders, and outlaws here. And the scalps that these guys have are both Indian and greaser. And they are going to go through here and try their best to get to Presidio and move about there. And you can just see that everyone's kind of got their concern when they run across any sort of civilization, because any humans or huts they see, everyone thinks that they're hutches, they're Apaches. So you're beginning to see where what comes about. And I just want to read this here real quick. To impress this belief more forcibly on their minds, we gave them a specimen of a savage war whoops, and toward night, coming in on a drove of fat beeves, we killed several and sent the rest scampering away with arrows sticking in their flanks. This, with the remains of a poor vaquero who was slain and scalped by Judge Holden, was sufficient to convince all of the Arizona that the fell Apaches were out on the warpath in force. Or does that all sound familiar?
And also, the artwork of the Apaches is kick-ass too, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, they are shared. Yeah, where they have their painted shields and spears with feathers on them or hair or whatever that is.
Little horns look awesome. And they get fucking wrecked. The Glanton gang does encounter some Apaches, and it doesn't last long, and it doesn't go well. And it goes so poorly, in fact, that they have to draw lots on who gets to execute their wounded among their gang as they're hiding out in an embankment, trying to recover, because they don't have enough horses. They don't have the strength to carry them, and so they draw lots basically. And Chamberlain is grateful he doesn't have to kill them, at least. So they kill them, and they ride off in the morning into the Grand Canyon. They actually have a different term for it. They don't call it the Grand Canyon. What do they call it? The Great Canyon of Colorado?
Yeah, it's the full proper title, the Great Canyon of the Colorado.
Yeah. And pass through it. Let me know if I'm skipping stuff. They pass through it and reach an Indian village.
There is one part I would love to read here. Judge Holden mounted a rock for a rostrum and gave us a scientific lecture on geology. The scalp hunters, grouped in easy attitudes, listened to the literati with marked attention. The whole formed an assemblage worthy of the pencil of Salvatore Rosa. Holden's lecture no doubt was very learned, but hardly true, for one statement he made was that millions of years had witnessed the operation producing the result around us, which Glanton, with recollections of the Bible teaching his young mind, had undergone, said was a damned lie.
Based.
Glad
someone
and
said
it. I wonder if that was intended, in what spirit that was intended. I wonder, what because if someone wrote that today, it would probably be a joke at Glanton's expense, right? But I mean, was Chamberlain a young earther? Very well could have been. I mean, what do you guys think?
I think it was just. Oh, go ahead, Gabe.
No, I'm going to Google real quick. When did Darwin release his? No, because even with Darwin's theory's evolution, like the idea of
this is a geology question.
Yeah.
The catastrophists and gradualists had already had their debates.
Well,
but the idea of the million years part.
Well, fair, yeah.
Wait, it's the idea of the million years. It sounds like a joke from a Reddit atheist, like like a fucking Judge Holden. He's like Christopher Hitching right now about the Earth is actually millions of years old. Like,
well, I mean, the thing to consider here is that it's not like the learned man was a commonplace thing at this point. I mean, obviously we have to consider our protagonist's education, which is 15 years old, a moderate education from church, and reading only Christian literature, and you took that shit literally, and so of course God created
Yankee, though.
Of course, God created the Earth in 7 days, and obviously the Earth is only like 6,000 years old, and these fossils are just the remains of what was destroyed in the Great Flood, which is all true, by the way. That's really how it happened. But because the New York Museum put out a thing saying like, oh, there's queer history to dinosaurs, and it's like, of course they didn't make it on the Ark. They were faggots.
That makes sense. But I was going to say, I don't think it was meant as a slight from Chamberlain, at least in my reading of it. It very well could have been. But I took it to be more, back in those days, he wasn't taking a stance on it. He was showing the Glanton versus the Judge distinction. But I don't think you would have been laughed in the street if you said the Earth was like, if you were more of a literal reader of the Bible back then.
See, it's such an interesting moment, right? Because Chamberlain probably just means like, listen, like Holden is reading all these new theories coming out. It is the 1840s, so a lot of this stuff is being published and being discussed among astronomers and geologists and such. So he just means it as like, the hyper literati Holden versus like the based rural Glanton who only knows his Bible. So I don't think it's a political statement. It's only pops out to us because all the modern stuff and again the modern brain rot. That's what makes it so funny. Because it pops out. It really does. Like, it really does feel like it's either a slight towards Reddit atheists or the other way around. Yeah. And I noticed, by the way, we totally skipped the introduction to Judge, by the way. That's the power of Base Chamberlain, is that we totally skipped over the introduction to Judge Holden. Like, everyone's favorite
Judge is such
character.
a dickhead, dude. He is such a fucking prick. Like,
he's lame in this version.
And McCarthy is like, how can I make him worse?
Yeah, how can I make this Reddit pedophile the greatest character in literature?
Listen, he nerfs Chamberlain. Listen, let's be honest. Real life Chamberlain will kick Holden's ass. He would not have gone down the way the kid did in Blood Meridian.
Okay, so you want me to read the introduction to Judge Holden in this? Because it is good. Yeah. The second in command, now left in charge of the camp, was a man of gigantic size called Judge Holden of Texas. Who or what he was, no one knew, but a cooler-blooded villain never went unhung. He stood 6'6" in his moccasins, had a large fleshy frame, a dull tallow-colored face destitute of hair and all expression. His desires was blood and women, and terrible stories were circulated in camp of horrid crimes committed by him when bearing another name in the Cherokee Nation in Texas. And before we left Fronteras, a little girl of 10 years was found in the chaparral, foully violated and murdered. The mark of a huge hand on her little throat pointed him out as the ravisher, as no other man had such a hand. But though all suspected, no one charged him with the crime.
It's a great
Holden was by far the best educated man in northern Mexico. He conversed with all in their own language, spoke in several Indian lingos. At a fandango would take the harp or guitar from the hands of musicians and charm all with his wonderful performance, and outwaltz any poblano of the ball. He was plumb center with a rifle or revolver, a daring horseman, acquainted with the nature of all strange plants and their botanical names, great in geology and mineralogy. In short, another admirable Crichton, and withal, or Crichton, actually, I guess that's and withal an errant coward. Not but that he possessed enough courage to fight Indians and Mexicans, or anyone where he had the advantage in strength, skill, and weapons, but where the combat would be equal, he would avoid it if possible. I hated him at first sight, and he knew it. Yet nothing could be more gentle and kind than his deportment towards me. He would often seek conversation with me and speak of Massachusetts, and to my astonishment, I found he knew more about Boston than I did. So, that's the whole character. Like, that's the entire
terrifying
character from McCarthy. Cormac McCarthy read this and was like, I am so inspired that I will write the best fan fiction ever fucking written for anything.
It basically is. Listen, I'm glad there's not a Chamberlain estate, right? Because he would owe him a paycheck. Because all of the big parts about Judge Holden's character in Blood Meridian, it's all in here. It's all this one paragraph. Basically, is the Old Testament foundations of how he would be portrayed in Blood Meridian.
Yeah, no, I mean, Holden is it's beat for beat the same character. Obviously, McCarthy is his style is difficult to match, especially in people who were writing at the end of the 20th and beginning of the 21st century. Not to damn with faint praise, but yeah, he took a story, the crystals of a story here, and expanded them into Blood Meridian. And when it says inspired, it's a pretty direct inspiration.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
I mean, for an example, right, of this kind of ordeal, I'm just going to read this quick passage real quick. In 2 days' march, without any incident, we reached our former stopping place, the spring of the Lone Cabbage Palm. We reached it none too soon, for that night a storm of rain burst over the desert with great fury. The rain fell heavy all the next day, but we resumed our march, our animals receiving new life from the torrents of water that pounded down on the thirsty earth. 5 days of hard marching brought us to the Gila River, opposite a village of Pima Indians. We built rafts of dry cottonwood and prepared to cross. Glanton, Savage, and Shirley swore he would assault the place and give no quarter to man, woman, or child. Holden supported him, but Hitchcock, Tobin, and all the other mountain men not only opposed this cruel massacre, but swore it should not take place. 2 of our men had been at the village before and spoke in strong terms of the kind and peaceful character of the inhabitants. Glanton finally put it to a vote, and all but 3 voted against the slaughter. And it's just like, well, you kind of get to see the kind of evil that we have here, only for later to find out that Holden is enjoying himself with his hand around the neck of one of these quote-unquote bronze Venuses, a young girl, and outraged her in all kinds of ways. When you see that outrage or humiliation, it's a nice way for Chamberlain to say brutally raped and assaulted.
In a non-Lindy way.
Paul Scalise would not approve.
He would not approve.
He'd block you.
Just insane imagining like approaching a small village, these friendly little manlets, and these little Oompa Loompas rising in the distance, and you're just like, hey guys, show of hands, who wants to just like massacre 100 people right now? Literally just like, oh hey, you want to trade some corn?
I'm for it.
Yeah, I'm for it. Well, it just shows the morality of how far Holden and Glanton are gone. Like even these other dudes, like the most wretched of the volunteers and the regular outcasts, they're like, let's just trade and be on our way. And they're like, how about we just murder everyone for no reason?
Yeah, and I mean it's essentially the same thing as, the same thing of course happens in Blood Meridian, where it's the remit is to go fight Apaches, because the Apaches will start shit, right? Mm-hmm. The Apaches will do this shit to everyone else, so do it to the Apaches. But, they're going to pay you $50 for a scalp, right? And if that scalp looks basically like an Apache's scalp, well, you're probably going to get $50. And $50 is $50, and anyone...
Not in the gay way.
And not in the gay way. Not in a gay way. I'm just saying it's $50. You're gonna turn down $50, or you're gonna get out that knife and lop off that
scalp.
that other Indian's hair. Yeah, you're gonna cut the top off, off the top.
This is back when we had the scalp standard.
A super cool detail of the scalp standard is the swirl, the hair swirl thing, where you have to include on the scalp the right ear. Because a lot of Native American people of that heritage have 2 swirls oftentimes.
Yep.
And which I've not seen, but I'm going to start scoping out noggins at the Walmart or something. Because, I've never seen that. But
do you live around a lot of Native Americans?
You've got natives?
No, actually I don't.
Oh.
But I'm sure I got some Mexicans.
Maybe you can just start looking at people's patches and start, be like, oh shit, you've got some native in you.
Start going to the local casino, start taking a look.
I'll lend you my phrenology scalpers, all right?
Yeah, get the calipers out, start measuring.
Calipers, yeah.
Yeah. Do they get 2 bald spots in the back, though? Like, how does that...
that'd be horrible.
Double the Norwood.
The Norwood scalper.
Yeah.
No.
What happened to you? Well, I started Norwooding, so I just went to the nearest casino and asked them to scalp me. But I mean, like, just to highlight, though, the absolute insanity and how far these men have fallen from grace. So they're with these Pima Indians, and he's sketching, So the next day, I believe I was waited on by the entire village to be sketched, our guides the day before, having well advertised my great abilities as an artist. The girls gathered around me, forming beautiful groups of living statuary. They all seemed shy and modest, but full of fun, and like all the sex overflowing with curiosity. They laughed and chattered about like magpies, their bead-like eyes sprinkling with merriment. I gave away several drawings to the Bells, who returned a compliment by bringing me huge watermelons. One gave me a cotton sash, such as the bucks wear on their heads, woven in bright red with blue lines. While I was sketching, an uproar arose in the village caused by Judge Holden's seizing of one of the girls and proceeding to take gross liberties with her person. A dozen cocked rifles brought to bear on him drove the brute from his prey, but the whole village was in ferment and it seemed that we stood a chance of being wiped out entirely. However, Holden made some explanation to the crowd in Spanish, and that appeased them.
What a Luciferian figure to be able to talk his way out of that.
Well, you got trouble, my friend.
Well, you got trouble. Right here in Pima City.
Hey, when you're a corked up white boy that knows Spanish, they let you do it. All right.
Oh my god.
I mean, he is 6'6", right? I mean,
Yeah, he's taller. He's taller than Chamberlain. Chamberlain is the manlet compared to him. Yeah, actually, I do have a question to pose to y'all with this Glanton section. Well, it's too faceted. One, how much sugar, or in this case spice, due to the mood, is he adding to this? Because the Buena Vista period, there's a lot of footnotes to it. It's basically 100% established that he was there in Buena Vista. He was there. He was interacting with these people. All his first-hand accounts line up mostly. But this is purely off the wall. Like, there's no historical record for anything involving Glanton, during this period. So how much do you think he's adding?
I mean, we know that the end of the story Glanton is a known historical figure and he's referenced in other things, but he also and some of the events at the very end of this story are also in the historical record. But I mean, how could Judge Holden be real?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a Holden shit. I was pissed that he drew a picture of Glanton, right? But he describes right before or right after he draws a picture, like a little profile of Glanton. You have this 6'6" giant, like history nerd, like lit major, like theater kid, but like a rapist version of a theater kid. Like, you don't draw that motherfucker? You don't give a sketch of him? But it's so detailed, you can't tell if it's bullshit or not. Is Holden a real character? Because to make him up entirely would have been out of whole cloth. There must have been a guy with a nickname of Judge Holden. Obviously, probably not his real name. But the entity or this man he's describing must have been real at some point. There is that Holden aura to it. Because out of all the characters, he has a very distinct aura and mood. And instantly, with the very little appearance time he has.
Well, I mean, like I said before, some people do think that there is a historical figure who was Judge Holden. Some people think that person was Charles Wilkins Weber, and that guy also wrote travel logs. And I read some of them, and they are also, I mean, of similar character to the Chamberlain.
Well, I mean, we do
confession.
have this, right?
Yeah.
And you can take a gander yourself there as to what we've got. A lecture on geology by Chamberlain.
Oh yeah, that's true. Oh, that's actually nice in color too.
Some amateur. This is from Wikipedia, and this is an article from Texas Hill Country. But some amateur historians have interpreted the name Judge Holden as a pseudonym and hope to establish his true identity. Popular candidates include Charles Wilkins Weber, an educated man in the region who once used the pseudonym Holden. And allegedly, Charles Wilkins Weber is what they say, and he was an American journalist and explorer. But
you think you hate journalists enough?
You think amateur historians could be here? He thought, but
the pacing changes actually in this last section too. Like, often things will go by very quickly, where in earlier chapters, Chamberlain would go into a lot of detail about hows and why things occur. And it gets kind of a rushed feeling to me, actually, in these, this whole section. So I wonder if that's Like, part of me wonders if part of the my confession is this is maybe the part that he like wanted to confess, but he's like not as proud of as the other things where he felt more justified.
I mean,
well, the reason why
it's
rushed,
also yeah.
Because he was ending. Yeah, the Civil War was breaking out.
Yeah, he was literally He was middle of writing it, like literally when he got the news.
Yeah, but we don't know how. It's not just the last page or two. Like, it's these whole this whole segment. It does have a different feel from the rest of the book, in just the how fast things move. I don't know. I don't know how real it is. I suspect that it's pretty historically accurate.
I mean, the other thing about it is that they're living super rough in this time period, right? They're in the capital D desert, right? The sections of Mexico at the beginning of the book are, various different climates. I mean, obviously it's tropical, or subtropical, but it's not this uninhabitable Sonoran desert, right? So they're living super rough. They're starving. Every time they encounter people, it basically ends in bloodshed. It's very different from the day-to-day life in an army camp, right?
It's different, but also the level of detail is like compare and contrast the battle that comes up when they approached the next group of Native American. What's this Indian tribe called? Not the Pima, the Yuma?
Yumas, yeah.
So the Yumas, they basically old Glanton tries to seizes some girls from them, and a battle breaks out, and they build a fort. And that's it's handled like 2 pages or so, and then they get away. But we've had whole chapters of just them holding up behind like a few dead horses before. I don't know. It just feels so much faster the way he starts pounding things in, and maybe it is he like knew he was like about to sign up, so he was just trying to fill pages. But yeah, something does feel different to me. Like I had a suspicion of maybe he did more than he actually says in these pages, and he was like, maybe I don't want to write some of this shit down.
Maybe I don't actually want to confess.
Yeah, maybe he was Judge Holden to some extent.
Yeah,
or,
maybe my grandkids don't need to hear this part.
Yeah, maybe my kids don't need to hear about all the Indian women that I witnessed being raped and murdered. Like but also I think that Cap has a point that a lot of this is like you are barely getting by in an environment that has not seen white men nor your way of life, and this area has been primarily inhabited by small Indian settlements, mainly trading routes and tracking wild beasts and such to live. Like, this is not, I mean, to reference King of the Hill when they're talking about like Phoenix, Arizona, and it being like 120 degrees, where Peggy's just like, this city is a testament of like mankind's defiance to God. Like, you are not living comfortable out here. On top of the fact that you are hunting Apaches and other Indians, you have a reputation of being rapists, murderers, and you don't trust the guy next to you because, yeah, you might be part of Clanton's gang, but also that guy's a red guy, this guy's a black guy, and here's some white boy from Boston. I don't know how much about this I would have the recollection to write down, or how much of detail do I want to give? I mean, the war is way more documented just because there's record of it too, and he knew all this, and he could look back in his adult life and knew with records who he fought with, who was there, who did X, Y, and Z. Whereas now we're looking at the quickest section of the book that doesn't really give us too much to work off with. I mean, we have names obviously, but we do move around from Fort Defiance to the Yumas to trying to get out, and then we've got all these women that we're trying to get with us, and now all of a sudden we're on the Jornada de Muerto, the journey of death, trying to get to California and be part of the 49ers and make our way there, because all of a sudden we realize that we're seeing government wagons, dead mules, dead men, dried to mummies, and we finally encounter the wagon drivers that he was part of before we're out here with Glanton.
Well, you're right. And also, let's also remember his age. Because at this point...
Yeah, he's like, what, 17?
He's 17.
Right. He might be a little older. He was 6... Yeah, it's like 17 or 18.
Like, even despite all he's lived through, at least in the military, it's organized. There's a sense of, like, I know you, you know me. There's unity. But he's a 17-year-old kid surrounded by these strange men who are at least double his age. I mean, he's a Giga Chad. He's already lived 1,000 lives. But still, a 17-year-old kid, you're in a bumfuck desert with all these people who are not of your kind. The closest one is a fucking Quebecois French-Canadian, basically. You got, and Holden might as well be a fucking alien. And Glanton, who nearly tried to kill you. So I could definitely see him being uncomfortable writing this part. Because, like, you could tell, like, he did get the creeps. Probably for the first time. He generally does have the creeps.
Are your fellow gang members giving you the ick? Are you having second thoughts about leaving the U.S. military to join a murder gang?
I think Fort Defiance was like a dark night of the soul for him.
Oh, yeah.
Because he talks about that night there was another disgusting orgy. Because, they capture some Indian girls from these Yumas who were just a completely friendly group of natives that were just like, oh, howdy, stranger, hop on a raft. We'll trade you some corn. And they're just like, yeah we're just going to just steal some of the best girls, he says. There's a line, he's like, grab the most attractive of the girls. They go up to this Fort Defiance, which is really
send one guy who's just into feet. He just picks two gross ones.
And it's just what even is Fort Defiance? It's just like a hilltop, right? And just surrounded, built and covered with howling Indians. They just surround them and besiege them.
Also, what a great so Glanton eats it, right? 3 shots. Where is it here? Yeah. We rode down to the river again, and Fort Defiance was in plain sight. The bluff on which it was built was covered by howling Indians. Glanton rubbed out. By God. What a great... was crying Tom's eulogy on his old commander as we rode back through the timbered bottom, somehow feeling sad and blaming ourselves for deserting in the hour of danger and death. That's a great...
Rubbed out by
rubbed
God.
Out by God. Glanton gooned out by God.
He done edged his last edge.
Recollections of a Gooner.
Show title.
Oh no.
That'll be the title. My Confession Part 2, Glanton gooned out.
My gland's done.
Oh, too bad I was cut.
Glanton
Thanks,
done
doctor.
gooned out. By God.
And then the judge, you want to talk about like full meme core. The judge, just appears behind them. And over the next few, as
this motherfucker teleports.
He teleports out of a fort covered in howling Indians somehow, talks his way out. Teleports behind them like Shadow the Hedgehog. He's just like, oh man, that was
nothing personnel, kid.
Nothing personal, kid. Teleports behind you.
I'm just gonna come with you guys now. No biggie.
Yeah.
Like, all right, sure. And he's like, okay, borrow your horse. By the way,
here we go. As I neared the scene, I recognized the gigantic form of Judge Holden, who had been brought to bay by a dozen yelling Yumas, who appeared to be armed only with their short clubs. Holden was resting, leaning on his heavy rifle, which he had been using as a war club with effect, for one savage lay brained at his feet, while the rest were seated on their haunches around him like a pack of prairie wolves around a fagged buffalo bull. Neither Holden or the buck showed the least sign of being aware of my approach until I raised the old yell of the dragoons, when the Yumas, with their strange sharp war cry like the bark of a coyote, started off on a run. I charged one who wore a shirt that I recognized belonging to a Mexican of our party, and rode him down, but my gallant steed stumbled on him, throwing me over his head. Like, Holden has just been beating the shit out of people with his rifle that he had ran out of ammunition with. And Holden's just like,
I love the fact
thank God you're here, I owe you one, let me get the hell out of here with you.
Yeah, I love the fact he uses the word brains, like he brained him. Like there's an oddly modern euphemism for getting your heads crashed in.
Well, apparently not.
No, it was a great descriptor.
I was not hurt on my feet at once, just as Holden dashed out the brains of the Red Devil with the butt of his rifle. And we get an image of this, by the way, which fantastic stuff. So,
did Kentucky Rifles have brass butts for that specific purpose?
Dude, that image is awesome. Yeah, we did not get that in the dissident version.
Yeah, that's so upsetting.
Yeah, sure didn't.
Actually, there's an entire book. It's available on Amazon. I think it's just Samuel Chamberlain's art. I think Art of Samuel Chamberlain or something like that. Which would be actually worth the price of admission, to be honest. Because the art is such a great touch to
Mike
the
Cop. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it gives a layer of authenticity, right? Because does he add a little sugar to things? Yes. But him drawing these things, and like one of the footnotes says, drawing these areas and these peoples before official U.S. documents of these events even happening. So it gives a lot of credence to authenticity of him actually sketching these events out.
Yeah, and I think this is also a good point to because this does end super abruptly. And I think this is in part due to the fact that he does go on to serve in the Civil War. And we actually have a photo of him. So, I mean, he served as what appears to be a general's rank. So he was a brigadier general at one point in the Civil War. So there you go.
Oh, can you post it?
Yeah,
a photo of him during Union era?
Well, he's got it there. Remember, it's "Be My Little General" if you want to count the stars on a general's uniform. So yeah, brigadier. Let me go put it here in the call so you guys can see. But this is Chamberlain in his Civil War uniform. But I mean,
I believe if I'm not recollecting this incorrectly, he was actually he got breveted as a brigadier general, so it was an honorary rank.
Yeah, brevet brigadier general. But yeah, he was the rank of a colonel, and then he served with the 1st Massachusetts Cavalry as command, and then he also commanded the 5th Massachusetts Colored Volunteer Cavalry.
Wow.
There's the hick lib. There's the hick lib.
If only there was a book about that. Could you imagine the shit he was saying?
Oh my God!
Me and my coloreds rolled out. They were some good boys, dude. The what's the meme? What's the meme? The guy in the truck.
The Yellowstone.
The hick lib on the truck.
The Yellowstone diatribes Chamberlain must have been going on. If only we had a publicist working with him back then.
Well, they might be colored, but at least they ain't greasers.
By God. And they ain't.
By God, they're Americans.
I don't want to miss another Holden Kino moment. So after the braining, there's sort of an awkward walk. We're like, oh, so you kind of led a slew of gang rapes and child molestations back there, bro.
You kind of got us all killed.
Like, whatever. Yeah, but they're down to the last 4 dudes now, so just kind of walking, trying to survive. And then Holden offers to ride the horse. He'll like carry something else if they let him ride the horse. But Chamberlain says, I saw through the scoundrel's designs and refused. But an hour later, he got on someone else's horse, jumped on the horse, whipping up and run off. They catch up slowly, and they see it some 600 yards off. The judge held up and cried out to us, "You cursed robbers and murderers! I go to denounce you in the settlements. You shall hang in California." So he's gonna go, tell him off, and then shortly after, the judge, what happened? Sorry, I haven't read this in a while. Did he fall off the horse, or did he get
the horse through the rider?
He gets bucked. And he says,
Judge Holden gets bucked.
What is the line? I was merely pretending to be retarded.
Yeah.
Yeah. The judge tried to turn it off as a joke, but we kept an ominous silence. So they just keep going together after this like Like a Homer Simpson attempt to betray them.
I wish McCarthy kept this scene in Blood Meridian.
The end of Blood Meridian is just like, it was yeah, my bad, guys. Didn't mean it.
a naked Judge Holden gets bumped off his horse.
Yeah, right.
What a douche.
And then later they see a white man tied up in the distance, and he offers to kill him, which he says no. And so he cut the rawhide thongs off of him and left him to die out in the desert. They carry on, and then he breaks down. At dark, none were in sight. I was alone once more in the desert, hungry, thirsty, and weary. I broke down completely and found myself blubbering like a child. I had fancied myself a man when I was nothing but a boy. It's like, this is finally what breaks him. This is the dark night of the soul. Wasn't Fort Defiance. It's like, I am alone. I've witnessed murder, war, more child murder and rape. I've been part of the worst gang I could ever possibly imagine. I've, loved and lost, and I am now dying alone in the desert. It broke him. And, later on he just asks for his heavenly father to just give him the strength to make it to water and anything that can keep him alive.
Right. It's a beautiful moment because you get the sense that he had a lot of like young man's fury, during the war era, because there's a sense of brotherhood and there's energy and there's vitality and the romantic part. But here is like the real deal Holyfield hell in survival. And you can imagine this 17-year-old kid just absolutely breaking down and crying. It's a beautiful moment. It's a sad moment, but it's also a kind of honestly like a very sincere, artistically beautiful moment. After all of this energy and all this romping and all this like romanticism, to see a real human in moment like that was quite beautiful.
Oh, I don't even want to call him a 17-year-old boy. Like I'm sorry. Like there's no microplastics in this man's testicles. This is a full ass 6'3" Giga Chad man that is fucked and killed and has done all that he can. This is a grown man who's broke down after so much just depravity and murder and cursing and swearing that at the end of the day, not just 2 years ago, this was a young man who had just gotten kicked out of church being called he's worse than the devil, and the life that he has known has been totally arranged upside down. That this young man from a little, Episcopal church in Boston is now going to die alone in the Sonoran Desert outside of California before he is saved by some Indians and some Mexicans that, thank God, were Christians of some kind. He says Cristianos, so maybe Catholic, who were, evangelized by the missions. So, and that's sort of what gives him second wind to live and to carry on and to save his horse.
Yeah, and also and that aspect, by the way, this idea of him, he starts in Boston, ends up in this desolate like wasteland. Like it also the regionalism of America, like it just proves again and again the bullshit idea of America as one entity. Because let's be honest, he might as well be an entirely different planet at this point. Not even a country,
full continent away. Yeah.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes,
you're not even in America.
Different.
I mean, he's literally not in America at the time, but
none of these treaties have been sketched out. Like, you are basically an Indian and Mexican territory. This is not Anglo-America at all. Like, you were so past the Mississippi River, it's not even funny.
You're right. I no shit. I should have realized that. But yeah, but you feel the alienness in this section too. Because Mexico feels like a romp, because again, the whole community aspect. But here, it's like you could easily turn this to a sci-fi horror story if you wanted to.
Well, I mean, you do get that sci-fi horror story. Like literally, the last 4 paragraphs are just him making the decision about what needs to be done.
Right,
and go from there. And I mean, I'm not going to read the end or anything like that, but just basically like he lives. And he gets some beef, or beeves, a term for a cut of meat, and he's off, and that's all that we get, and that's sort of the end there. But what a great piece of, discussion there. there is a level. I don't know. Is there a postscript in Alaric's version?
Yes. I'm looking at the postscript right now.
So you get the Roger Butterfield postscript.
It doesn't say Roger Butterfield, but it's just a description of what happens after.
So does it? So okay. Does his postscript at the end say Samuel Chamberlain's handwritten confession comes to an abrupt end at this point, but on May 9th, 1853, Americans appeared before the Alcade of Los Angeles and declared that they were members of John Glanton's band. Is that in there?
No, those exact words, but yeah, it is on this rather abrupt note.
Okay.
That Chamberlain's My Confession comes to a close.
Okay. I was just curious as to maybe he wrote his own version based off Butterfield's, but yeah.
Yeah, to avoid the copyright.
Well, I would understand, and I'm sure like he would
Right.
do that or what. I'm not making an accusation. I like Alaric. I'm not accusing him of any kind of misconduct, but Chamberlain was obviously had to change his name because he was a deserter from the army and had reason to hide his identity. Stayed in California for a while, and then from this time on, his career is a matter of public record. On July 4th, 1855, he was married in Boston to Mary Keith, aged 22, a native of New Brunswick, Canada. The marriage lasted for 53 years, produced 3 children, all girls. Each one of them received
three times.
All 3 of them received a Mexican name, spelled in Chamberlain's unorthodox fashion: Transeta, Dolores, and Carmelita. At the time of his wedding, Sam was working as a teamster. 6 years later, when the Civil War broke out, he was a policeman in nearby Cambridge, and he immediately joined a group of local volunteers who marched to the State House in Boston with a drummer and a flag, collecting more recruits along the way until they numbered a company. J. Prentice Richardson, a well-known attorney, was elected captain of this outfit. Chamberlain, then 31 years old, was elected as first lieutenant. And then you can talk about his Civil War career and the rest of his life. But he was a member of the Grand Army of the Republic, and as the Veterans of Massachusetts. 14 horses shot in battle, wounded 7 times, and participated in more than 100 battles. The down-to-earth facts are not quite as dramatic as this, but they do add up to a fascinating, complex character, part ruthless Yankee and part incorrigible dreamer and boaster, who left us with a book that is more revealing than most formal histories of his time. And that's Roger Butterfield's conclusion to his postscript. And really, what a great piece of history, and cut short by the Civil War, but hey, it gave us Blood Meridian and a great piece of American history with some fantastic illustrations of the Mexican-American War and parts of the Sonoran Desert and future Arizona and New Mexico territories that, we wouldn't see until years later. So what a great book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it stands on it stands as own as a testament of this one genuinely. I dare to call him a great man.
For sure.
To live through all of this, to live to 1908, and there's a great picture of him as an old man surrounded by his family, and it's very sweet. I mean, does it suck that he landed on Snake Eyes 3 times with the 3 girls instead of a son? Yeah, that kind of blows. It's a bittersweet ending, but you know what? At least he lived. He probably has a bunch of sons south of the border.
I love that that's your takeaway. Final thoughts. Yeah, he went through all this, and then he just ended up with 3 daughters. Sometimes you can't win them all. You can't win them all, guys.
Absolute king shit right there. No.
I'm sorry. Someone had to say it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Junktown Fallout ending. It's like you did everything right, but I still got the bad ending. What the fuck?
Yeah.
You didn't do that one side quest outside of Buena Vista. You soft locked yourself out of the good ending where you have sons. That's what a damn tragedy,
Sorry, guys, you don't get points for only drinking raw milk because pasteurization wasn't invented until the 1860s.
Could you imagine explaining that to Mrs. Mary Chamberlain that they're just three Mexican names to your lily white Anglo children? This is Carmelita Chamberlain.
Why did they get these names?
Why did they get these names? I'll never forget her supple alabaster form. Yes,
to have that 12-year-old in my arms again.
There's your snake.
Mary, I love you for who you are, but you are no nubile poblana.
You will never be brown.
Dude, I love the idea. It's just like, you know what? It's time for me to settle down. So he finds this girl. They get married. She slowly learns about his eccentricities. And then when the kids come out, I truly, like, she knows he's working on a book. She doesn't read it yet. It's too late. She's already married. Just don't divorce,
and it's after
bitch.
He dies, does she finally read it and goes, "Oh my god."
Oh my god.
Yeah, jungle fever this entire time.
No. Let's not conclude by insulting this like absolute American hero's memory with the contemporary standards of our time. I mean, Sam Chamberlain fought for Uncle Sam in 2 separate wars, killed, slaughtered, and did untold, unspeakable horrors that our comfortable asses will never experience. Unless we get a Cormac McCarthy.
True.
Unless we get a The Road situation, also by Cormac McCarthy. But I mean, we will never have a life like this.
Right.
And I thank God that we have his memoir to look back on this piece of American history when you were an American because you survived the frontier. This man, fought in 2 wars, conquered parts of the desert and met unspeakable evil of what that can do far away from civilization. But honest to God, if this wasn't a memoir and you were to tell any guy to read this, they would tell you that this is a great piece of fiction. But this book right here is a memoir. It's an autobiography. It's part history. Some of it, is it dramatized? Maybe, probably. But I think for the sake of the reader, I don't think that this is dramatized or, hyperbole in any way, shape, or form. I think all of this happened exactly as he wrote it, hearsay or otherwise, and this is what Americans and the world was like when things were a little more wild, and may they one day be more wild again.
Yeah, outstanding book. I had one historical thing I wanted to point out also on that note. The fact he just walked out as a, to your point, Prude, about, it's a different time and a different, you could be how a man could live then. As a deserter, he just went on and lived his life, and he just rejoined the army one day. Like, just how unimaginable is that as, like, the kind of adventure that was allowed back then, the kind of mistakes you could make and bounce back from. It's, it really shows you a different world that was possible, and maybe will be possible again in the future. And it kind of breaks our frame as modern people, the way we think about this stuff. So, yeah, I think we said before, hopefully anyone that's listened this far will go ahead and pick it up and read it if they haven't already, because, it's just an outstanding
I hate to reference Bronze Age mindset again, but, like, there's a section in BAM where he talks about, like, imagine an alternate world where Mitt Romney as a senator uses his wealth to, like, travel and conquer parts of the other world while returning to America with all his wealth and riches and being, an adventurer of the old kind of world and style. And, you might read that section, you're like, well, of course, it's hilarious to think that is something Mitt Romney could be. But then you read this, and you're like, oh, this could have been possible at a different point in time in American history, where, like, Mitt Romney could have been, like...
several times.
And it happened several times. Sam Chamberlain is an excellent example, and he's just one example of countless thousands of men who lived a life like this. And it's just kind of crazy to think, and I think that's a good point. Like, if you think Bronze Age mindset has funny stories, like, go read this book, and then you realize, actually, no, it did exist at one point in time, and a vitalist, muscular Christian, like, fucked half of Mexico and conquered not only Mexico, but also fought against the Confederacy.
Yeah.
I would totally read Muscular Christian Mindset by Samuel Chamberlain. Listen,
muscular Christian mindset. Yeah, fund it.
Yes, I would totally. He's very much he will totally out Bap. I love Bap, but Chamberlain has him beat in terms of vitality. And also with Dave's, there's 2 aspects I would like to say to this. One is that this Sam Chamberlain's life completely like justifies Frederick Jackson Turner's like frontier thesis. Like, the Americans, where the frontier was real, and like actually, like, listen, there are foreign creatures, entities, entire different existence beyond our cozy little 13 colonies. Like, the frontier definitely psychologically imprinted entirely. It's like, basically, when the frontier closed, it was basically, I don't want to say ethnic genocide, but like the Americans, as was known for like 100+ years, died out. and this weird post-frontier Americans might as well be an entirely different ethnic group, right? Because the Chamberlain's entire life and existence is based on him interacting with the frontier. I mean, for God's sake, and when he finally hit L.A., once he lived in California for a couple of years, he went back to Mexico. He was in an expedition to Baja, California, and he took the scenic route all the way back to New England, right? It's imagine you're like Sam Chamberlain and you're on that boat taking the long way route back home. Like, you know damn well that's when he held up his hat. He's like, listen, you know, my adventuring days are over. That's it. You know, like imagine those months. I think it would take a month.
Well, yeah, except like, yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because there's probably a whole other memoir about all the pipe he laid on that trip at various ports of call. Right?
You just know it.
He was alive.
You just fucking know it.
Yeah, it sucks we didn't get another memoir out of him. He was alive for 40 plus extra years. Like, he had so much time. I would love a Civil War memoir.
Right?
Me and my colored fellows. That would be the title of that one.
Chamberlain's Coon Squad.
Oh my god.
Well, let's be honest. It was probably his Civil War experience was probably pretty fucking tame compared to his Mexico.
I
Did you not
sincerely doubt that.
Read the postscript? Like, that guy got wounded like 7 times, participated in 100 battles. Excuse me? I want the Civil War, like, my confession. Because I bet that was wild.
Yeah, but compared to like desert guerrilla warfare, he probably like the total war aspects of the Civil War didn't really happen until like the march down to Georgia. That's why it was so controversial, right? Because that's when shit went like fucking partisan AWOL. Like I assume most of his battles were mostly like typical by the rule books battles. I would say, at least.
Boy, I don't know why you would think that.
Well, I'm no Civil War expert. I'm not a Civil War expert, but
I'm just saying, like, yeah. I mean, this was wild to begin with, and yeah, I mean, I guess he probably calmed down at some point in his life, but yeah, I don't think that he had a normal one in the Civil War. Like, there's
to be fair, I don't think he had a normal one ever.
Yeah,
no.
That's what I'm saying. So the Civil War memoir had to be...
I mean, let's just list out. So the 1st Massachusetts Cavalry Regiment, U.S. Volunteers, September 3rd, 1861 to July 24th, 1865. Here are the engagements according to what Wikipedia has listed. The first Battle of Pocatalico, the Battle of Secessionville, Antietam, Fredericksburg, Aldie, Gettysburg, the Bristow Campaign, Mine Run Campaign, the Battle of Cedar Creek, the Battle of Yellow Tavern, the Battle of the Wilderness, Spotsylvania Courthouse, Cold Harbor, the Siege of Petersburg, the First Battle of Deep Bottom, the Battle of the Crater, and the Battle of Vaughan Road. And this would not be... like, excuse me?
So he was at Gettysburg.
He was at...
So can you imagine?
He survived
can you,
Antietam, one of the bloodiest wars, or battles of the entire war. I want that...
Yeah, no, Shelby
I want
Foote
that
talks
confession.
about that. Okay, I retract my statement. I
imagine his battle of Buena Vista, but it's Antietam and Gettysburg.
Like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to write a Blood Meridian of that. Like, someone needs to just do a fanfic, Chamberlain fanfic.
Well, Shelby Foote's Civil War trilogy apparently is really good.
Oh, it's required reading.
Is it as epic? Because didn't he write that by hand too?
It's required.
The entire trilogy?
It's required reading.
Well, during our Civil War special, we'll cover Shelby Foote's entire Civil War trilogy.
If you thought this was a 2-parter, the Civil War...
It will only take us 15
It'll
episodes.
only take us 15 episodes.
Speaking of which, all right, shall we call it there? I think we've all... Any last words on Mr. Chamberlain?
The last words for me is that I truly, truly, truly am saddened that he did not live until 1914. Because he died in, his 60s? 1908. He was still relatively young. He could have lived till 1914. I can just easily imagine one of his grandsons going off to war to, like, sleep in a muddy ditch somewhere in East France. You know, the French women won't sleep with him because he's an uncultured American. The fucking shells are going next to his head. And he asks his grandpa, who went through all these battles, like, do you have any advice? You know, he's like... Listen, he just goes on to tell stories about all the Latinas he slept with.
Well, he died at age 78, so I mean, he lived a pretty damn good life for all the stuff.
He would have been 68.
Yeah, I'm just asking for 4 more years. I would love to see a young. I just can easily imagine a funny dialogue where you have the war. The war is hell.
You gotta go. He's gonna describe his 3 types of soldiers to his grandson and be like, "Look, you just need to like get in trouble regularly, and
and swing dead.
Go fuck some mademoiselles. It's fine. Don't worry about it."
Hey, listen, make sure you get your horse proper drunk. You don't want a sober horse, son.
God, no.
Oh, God. I can easily see the meme of, like, the war is hell, Doomer, Wojak, World War I grandson versus the boomer, Giga Chad, Pussy Sling.
Yeah, the bloomer Mexican-American war.
The bloomer Samuel Chamberlain.
You think about it, listen, she's a 6-foot-tall woman, so you got to think about the dimensions of her vagina, right? So there's a lot of space in there anyway. So you're not really going to notice it in terms of multiple use.